Welcome to Andy and Arnie on 3, presented by Wendy's. It has been an incredible Saturday, Ari. We're here in Michigan. We thought we were going to have the most exciting game of the day. We had an interesting game. The result was interesting. The game was not very exciting, but oh my God, the rest of the slate has been incredible.
Andy, it's just a reminder that there's no such thing as a bad Saturday slate. I mean,
No.
it's truly remarkable as we're sitting here at close to midnight Eastern time. We got Oregon on the iPads here. They're losing to Boise State as halftime's closing in, and there are just too many games to get to, and we're going to try to get to all of them.
Yeah, we got Notre Dame going down to Northern Illinois, which is the headliner. But I mean, you think about all these games. First of all, Texas blasting Michigan is a big result, but you had the Oklahoma State Arkansas overtime thriller. You had Cal going into Auburn and beating the Tigers. You had Alabama struggling with USF for a minute, and then they get out of it. You had Oklahoma struggling with Houston for even longer, but they survive. You had South Carolina going to Kentucky and just hammering the Wildcats, which nobody expected. You got to see DJ Lagway play for Florida.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
I think you might have forgot that Notre Dame lost to NIU.
I did say that.
Oh, you did? Okay, yeah.
Tennessee crushed NC State. It was all over the place. There was so much. Iowa State beat Iowa. I mean, it's amazing. But let's start in South Bend, because I believe there were these two idiots who were on video last week. They did a whole video about how Notre Dame was going to go undefeated, and what does that mean for the playoff? Are they going to be the number 5 seed? So Notre Dame is not going to be undefeated. Is Notre Dame going to make the playoff? Does Notre Dame have a chance? A Notre Dame team that can lose to Northern Illinois is not making the playoff, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess, do you think they will and can they are two very separate things. Now,
right.
I don't think that they will. I think that a Notre Dame team that finishes undefeated or with one loss in most years in this system will probably find its way in. So if they're able to somehow rebound and run the table, I think we will be having discussions at the end of the year that about seeding when it comes to them. I don't think that's going to happen. The thing that I have a hard time with, and every year I do, Andy, in this sport is, and this is a Notre Dame thing, but this is kind of a theme of the day thing.
Yeah.
How do you gauge when a team that's clearly better than the other struggles for 4 quarters, which we saw in
all over the
country? Notre Dame just happened to be the one that
lost,
didn't finish the
right.
game.
Well, right. Imagine USF goes for it down 21-13, goes for it on 4th down instead of kicking the sad field goal, and then goes for 2. Like that game could have been. Imagine instead of getting hit in the end zone for the safety, Houston hits a bomb and they win again. Like everything was so close.
Or let me just phrase it this way: if Northern Illinois misses the field goal,
right,
and Notre Dame wins, that's one play at the end of the game that's completely different. Does your thought process about Notre Dame change if they remain unbeaten? And I think
we do the Dan and Ty, our friends from the Solid Verbal, win your clunkers. We say that instead of, oh my God, Notre Dame lost, it's over for them. Marcus Freeman after the game saying, hey, we've been here before. Don't say that.
Yeah, please don't say that.
Don't remind people you lost to Marshall and remind people you lost to a terrible Stanford team. Like, you're supposed to be done with that now.
Yeah, and that was the number one thing with Notre Dame was we like the roster coming in. And let me just take responsibility, first of all, Andy. I think I drove you into that undefeated video because I was so passionate and excited to get that takeoff.
I was on your side on that one.
But we were supposed to be in a situation where Notre Dame had its deepest, best roster under Marcus Freeman. He had his first 2 years under his belt. He's grown as a head coach. Notre Dame is a veteran team. They have a quarterback that they brought in Riley Leonard that they feel really good about. This was not supposed to happen.
Yeah.
And how it happened and why it happened, I think, is a very interesting thing. I saw during Marcus Freeman's press conference when people were asking him for questions or for answers, he had more questions than answers in this post.
And just had to stop to let the band play. I mean, it was bad.
Yeah. I mean, there's no other way around it. And like, it is kind of funny in this new era that we have to have these discussions about whether or not the team can make the playoffs still after a loss like this. But I think the more interesting question, and probably the one that's most pertinent to right now, is what the hell's wrong there? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
that's the problem.
Why can't they throw the ball? Like,
yeah.
How many years does it take? How many different quarterbacks do you have to get from other? Well, you're kind of an ACC school, but not really. How many other ACC quarterbacks do you have to get to finally be able to throw the ball? Like, what's the problem?
Yeah,
because
and it's not just quarterbacks; it's wideouts too.
Oh, absolutely, it's
right.
both of them. And if they could, we're not having any of these discussions. You know, they would have blown out Texas A&M last week if they could throw the ball.
Mm-hmm.
Like that, I don't understand where the disconnect is.
Well, here's the most confusing thing, Andy. Last week, the thing that we were talking about the most in your office in Gainesville was how impressive it was that Notre Dame, a team that we have constantly criticized for not enough team talent, went into College Station against a very athletic team and mauled them.
Right.
And if you could do that a week ago
why
on the
couldn't you
road,
maul
why
Northern
didn't
Illinois
you
at home?
maul Northern Illinois at home? And it's just like, it's not just the passing game, it's the whole thing. And it's one thing. Teams all over the country, like we said, played in games against teams that they had no business playing games with. Alabama won by 30 or something, but they were in a one-point game.
If you just look at the score of the Alabama USF game, you have no idea what actually happened in that game.
This Oregon team that everybody thought had a really good chance to win the Big Ten's down by 6 now, going into halftime with Boise, as we're recording this. And last week when I was doing the top 10, it was like, how do you rank properly without context when teams have clunkers and win? But I'm going to go, after we're done with this, trying to attempt the top 10. And I'm looking at the top 10 teams that I had last week, and Notre Dame's out. Yeah. But everybody else played poor games today.
Well, let's workshop it.
Yeah.
So who didn't? There
are 3 teams
Texas
that
didn't.
Georgia,
we saw them in
Texas,
person.
and Ohio State are the 3 teams that did not struggle. And then everybody else, to a certain extent, had an ugly day. And Tennessee was in my top 10. Tennessee also won very easily, and I think they're going to move up considerably, considering they played a pretty good team from what we understand and won by 1 million. We'll get to that. But there are a lot of other instances where Alabama was number 4. Where do you put Alabama? Oregon was number 5. If Oregon somehow wins this game, where do you put them? It's just a very difficult workshop, but really kind of in a world where we have 12 teams standing at the end of the year, you want these Saturdays that muddy things up and to make things interesting.
I want to point something out interesting in the chat. So Zach, who's an Alabama fan, says Alabama was on its 3rd string tackle, and once they put in their 1st string partially hurt guy, that's Pritchett, back in, it became a blowout. And remember, Caden Proctor didn't play in this game either.
Right.
We talked about this all offseason. This is what the NIL/transfer portal era has done. There are no super teams. There are no teams that are so much deeper than everybody else that no one can compete. Yes, Georgia is still deeper than everybody. Ohio State is still deeper than most teams. But Alabama is one of those that we always thought is deeper than everybody. You saw they were a couple of players away from being very competitive with USF. Like those 2 offensive tackles are the difference between them blowing out USF and being in a very evenly matched game with USF.
Yeah, I mean, 5 years ago, Alabama's 2nd string tackle is an All-American, maybe, or a starter at least on another Power 5 team. And those days are over. But still, Alabama, the gap between Alabama and USF is supposed to be much bigger than 2 players not playing.
I don't think the gap between anybody and anybody's that big right now.
Yeah.
Maybe Ohio State and Georgia are kind of above everybody, but I don't know. Well, we saw Texas against Michigan. Texas looked amazing, but what happened? So Jadon Blue goes out early. He came back. We're counting scholarship running backs.
And I miscounted because we were at 1 at one point, but it was 2.
Yeah.
2 very young players, one of which was a top 200 player nationally, I believe.
And they did great.
And they did really well. Yeah. And I mean, the holes were there. The offensive line did a really good job blocking. And I guess we're on to Michigan, and I hope people will just forgive us if we're kind of all over the place today, because it's
one of those days. Yeah.
Let's just dive into this one while we're here.
Yeah.
I think that Texas is as best as you're going to get in the NIL era, to piggyback off of the point that you made about the way rosters are constructed, in the sense that they recruit really, really well.
Mm-hmm.
They do a pretty good job of maintaining their talent year over year. I don't think they have a really huge attrition rate outside of, the 10 dudes that went into the league last year. And they were playing against a team that lost just about everybody. One team looks like they're right in the thick of the national championship discussion, and one team looks like they need 3 years to rebuild their team again, despite having 3 of the top 10 players in college football on the same defense. So, I do think that in this game, we're going to find out a lot more context as the days go on, or the weeks go on, I should say, with Michigan and how good they are this year. But I do think that this is just another lesson of maybe recruiting at a really high level in the NIL era isn't enough for you to have an insane amount of depth like they did 5 years ago, but it's probably still the answer to which teams are going to be really, really good year over year.
And they're going to be the ones that ultimately win the national title. The ones that
well,
have
don't
more
say that. I made that mistake last year.
Well, no.
Yeah.
The thing is, though, the one that's lucky enough to stay healthy for the right games is going to win the national title. Somebody else is not going to. Somebody else is going to be just as deep, have a couple of injuries in the wrong position on the wrong day, and that's going to be it.
Yeah, or the team that wins the national championship is a veteran team like Michigan who had 6 5-stars in the right positions and did the portal not heavy, but did it right.
Yeah.
And you're able to hit that 1-year blip. And Michigan had a 3-year run of winning the Big Ten, but a 1-year run of winning a national championship. And Lord knows how long it's going to take before they're in a position to win a national title again. So Texas, I think if you come out of this game, you say, hey, we lost almost as much as Michigan did a year ago. Our offensive line is insanely good.
Yeah.
Our wide receiver depth, despite losing A.D. Mitchell and Xavier Worthy to the NFL and J.T. Sanders, the tight end.
Yeah.
Their leading receiver was a tight end today. They have the depth of players coming up that are ready to replace those guys. Quinn Ewers took a step forward. Their defense was awesome. And you look at this team and you go, well, they didn't get it done last year, but their program is healthy enough where year over year, Texas is no longer a punchline. And when you ask, like, what does Texas is back means, that was not a thing that was solved last year. And I think it's solved this year. I think it's Texas is not the butt of a joke anymore. They can beat anybody in the country, and they can do it after losing so much talent, which is something that they didn't really have an issue or had a lot of issues with in the past.
We went really deep into that game with our instant reaction show, which you can find on the On3 Sports YouTube page, which you should be subscribed to. If you're not, go ahead and do that now. We also have it on the podcast feed. So if you are subscribed to the podcast, it's in your feed. You can go deep into that game. We gotta move on to some other games though. Before we do that, we gotta talk about Prize Picks, the most fun daily fantasy game though. My strategy for today of security blanket tight ends and quarterbacks running the ball in just didn't work. I tried.
Yeah, you're gonna have those. It's
Taylor Green for Arkansas. I was sure he was going to, and then it was all Jaquindon Jackson once they got by the goal line.
Yeah, I had Xavier Worthy over or more than 55. Or 55.
Isaiah Bond.
Oh, Isaiah Bond. Sorry. Hey, same person in my head. That's the point we were making about Texas.
Exactly.
More than 55 and a half receiving yards. I think he had 51 on the first 2 drives and then did not make it more than that. So
well, if you use the code Staples, play $5, get $50 instantly. And by the way, every week in September, free Caleb Williams square. Well, essentially free. It's 0.5 more than. So if he throws for a yard, you win that square. That's how Prize Picks works. You pick at least 2 squares. The more squares you pick, the higher the potential payout. Very fun, even when your strategy doesn't quite pan out, but that's okay. I'll get them next time.
You've hit your fair share of squares.
I did really great last week. So play $5, get $50 instantly using that code Staples. All right. Where should we go from here? Should we go to Lexington?
Let's go to Lexington.
Because there was... I don't want to paint with a broad brush because this was not the whole Kentucky fan base, but there were a couple Kentucky fans who decided on Thursday night that they were really mad at me for calling Kentucky the best job in America. And they were insulted by it because I was saying that their expectations aren't very high compared to Alabama and to Georgia. And this bothered them. And then these people were very adamant that Kentucky was going to beat South Carolina. And I honestly thought Kentucky was going to beat South Carolina as well. I picked South Carolina against the spread because the spread was 9.5. That's just too many points in a game like this. That's not how the game went.
No.
South Carolina annihilated Kentucky. And I get on the KSR message board after the game, and holy crap, they're out for blood.
Yeah, well, that's just another perfect example, too, of South Carolina had a pretty ugly game in week 1. They come back week 2 and they look like a world beater.
Yeah.
And I don't know what it was in the portions of the game that I was really focused on, Andy. It seemed like Kentucky was against the ropes from the beginning and going for it in the first half from their own 31-yard line.
I did not love that call. Yeah.
That it almost felt like desperation mode before it should have been desperation mode.
And maybe it was. Maybe that's Mark Stoops saw maybe earlier than everybody else, like, this is going to be bad. So that's why you go for that 4th down as early as you do, end up giving the ball to South Carolina deep in Kentucky territory. It was bizarre at the time, but then you realize, okay, they really can't throw the ball at all right now. And it's amazing to me because they looked good. Now, granted, it was Southern Miss, but you thought, okay, this is going to be fine. They'll break their losing streak against South Carolina, and then they're not going to beat Georgia, but maybe they give them a little bit of a game. Now I'm worried about them against Georgia. Meanwhile, South Carolina is going to play an LSU team that could barely run the ball against Nichols.
That's right. We didn't even mention that at the top, did we?
No. LSU was in a game with Nichols late. In a game. Now they pulled away. But are you confident at all that LSU can go to Columbia and beat South Carolina after what we saw today?
Especially because Columbia has been a pretty tough out a lot of the last 2 years.
Oh, it's a good environment when they're good.
It gets rocking in there. So yeah, no, I'm not confident about that. Now, Kentucky is a completely different discussion point, but you have to go with the 2-0 team here. That's got to give them flowers too for going into a game.
Yeah, Lenore Sellers looked great. I mean, when's the last time a football player in rec specs was this good? Eric Dickerson, I guess.
When's the last time a cool player in rec specs threw the ball?
Oh, well, Bob Greasy wore eyeglasses. He did not wear rec specs. So I really don't know. I don't know the answer to that because I don't remember a lot of rec specs quarterbacks.
It does kind of strike me as something that we'll look up in 4 weeks and everybody in the stands will be wearing them.
Absolutely.
Like it's like,
oh no,
totally
it'll be their college game day is going there next week. I will bet you $5 that there is a scene on college game day where the entire where McAfee and Saban and Herb Street and Reese Davis are all wearing rec specs.
I would bet you that $5, but I had a pretty rough day today.
Well, you also know you're going to lose. Like we game day's gotten a little predictable, and we can see that one coming a mile away now. But yeah, that is going to remember after the LSU USC game, we had some people in the chat like, "Are we sure Brian Kelly's okay?" I'm like, he's fine. He's fine. He won the SEC West the first year, had the Heisman winner last year. Are we sure Brian Kelly's okay?
Yeah, I was the one who brought that up.
Yeah.
And then you were like appalled by it. So I'll give you the floor.
I'm no longer appalled.
What is
no longer appalled?
Well, it's just so interesting because I mean, we didn't even get into this with the Notre Dame section, but how do Notre Dame fans feel about the guy they were in love with 48 hours ago?
Oh.
When you come into this year, you have all these high hopes, a team that has a very easy schedule. I'm going to use the word easy, not manageable. Easy schedule with a veteran team and a quarterback that you're feeling good about. You go into Texas A&M, you beat them on the road, and what you thought was one of the 2 toughest games on your schedule. We did it. You're doing it. You're a Notre Dame fan. You're saying, hey, we're in a position in this 12-team field that we are going to make the field. And then 1 week later, you lose to NIU at home, and then you add the NIU situation to the Stanford situation, to the Marshall situation, and then you look at the whole picture, and it's like, whoa, wait a minute.
Yeah.
I might not be really looking at this the right way.
Yeah.
And that's how quickly in college football, in the snap of a finger, it goes from where we've got it made with the best up-and-coming coach that's going to bring Notre Dame to its ceiling.
Yep.
And to wrap it back around to Brian Kelly, these are the same Notre Dame fans that were saying Notre Dame reached Brian Kelly's ceiling at Notre Dame, not Notre Dame's ceiling. And then here we are talking about Brian Kelly at LSU.
Yeah. It's bizarre. It is we were ready to fire Shane Beamer 2 weeks ago. And now Shane Beamer beats LSU.
They're 3-0 and he's dancing again.
They're going to extend him. I mean, it is wild. Ari, we haven't even talked about one of the games that we talked about a bunch. I'm actually watching a Coach Prime commercial on one of the TVs in here.
The 2 games or the 3 games that we thought were going to be the biggest games of the day. Texas and Michigan. Yep. Interesting result, not an interesting game. We thought Colorado and Nebraska, and we thought Oregon and Boise, or I did.
Well, or Tennessee and
NC State.
Yeah.
The only one of those games that is interesting is the one that's still happening. Halftime, Oregon is losing to Boise State 20-14 as we record this. But again, I think that this Colorado-Nebraska result is an interesting result.
It is. It is. Nebraska jumps all over them, goes up 28-0. You see Shador going off at the end of the game. It looked like he was with some trainers going to the
Limping.
locker room.
People were asking him what time it was on his way out of the stadium.
I would imagine they did, yes. And what time was it? It was time for Nash Hutmacher and Ty Robinson. That's what time it was, because like first series of the game, bubble screen. The first time he has to actually drop back, those two monsters come straight up the middle and sack him like all night. You're not going to believe this, Ari. Colorado's offensive line didn't get any better. I haven't noticed any of the Colorado fans who spent the entire offseason in the chat telling me I was an idiot for saying you probably can't make a good offensive line exclusively in the transfer portal. Maybe you can't. Now, I know Jordan Seaton got signed out of high school, but he's also new. So,
yeah, it's like I'm having a hard time with this because my impulse is to do like a victory lap of we told you, but their over-under for the season wins was like 6. Like this is what was supposed to happen. This is
what we expected. If Nebraska's good, they were supposed to lose this game.
Nebraska has very good skill position players. I don't think that Jimmy Horn and Travis Hunter and Shador Sanders aren't good anymore. What I think happened is what we've been trying to communicate in a nice way and sometimes in a not so nice way, which is the way that Deion Sanders has gone about building this program is going to leave them very vulnerable against physical teams. And guess what? Half of the Power 5, if not more, is a very physical team.
Yeah.
So we watched them in week 1 or week 0, whatever week that was, on the Thursday night, and they ended up winning, but you saw some of the symptoms of what this could lead to. Nebraska is a team that has repeatedly shot itself in the foot. They didn't really do a lot of shooting themselves in the foot in this game. In fact, there was this one grab-ass touchdown, for lack of a better term, where it bobbled up in the air and the Nebraska receiver brought it down. That's the type of play that Nebraska would give up in the past. So if Nebraska is functional, like we talked about with Matt Rule coming into Lincoln, defrosting the program, which is a funny thing that I like to say all the time, and is successful with that, with the team talent that they have and the line that they play, like, and if they want to assume the black shirts situation, role or name, there's no way that Colorado could physically match up with them. And we're not talking about a Nebraska team that we think is going to go out and win 12 games this year. We're talking about a middle tier, like Big Ten
maybe
team,
a 7 or 8 win team.
Yeah. It's not a great team. Yeah. And Colorado made them look great because there's a physical element to this game that cannot be fixed with a Band-Aid, which is why I constantly rail on Deion, because they have Jordan Seaton there, and it's like more of that. And it might not happen right away.
Well, I was going to say, more of that takes 2 years.
I know,
3 years.
But that's what I thought we were doing here. I didn't think we were flipping it as quickly as possible in year 1, which is great, and then just hoping to do it again, because you don't just go from 1 win to 6 wins. And I think going from 1 win to 5 or 6 wins is a hell of a lot easier than going from 6 to 10.
Yeah. And I just, with Nebraska, Dylan Raiola had 0 turnovers. Like, think about how different that is from the Jeff Sims situation in the first 2 games of last season, the Minnesota game, the Colorado game last year.
Yeah, night and day.
Nebraska is a totally different situation now. And this guy's just a freshman. He looks very poised, very polished. And I'll admit it. I was worried about him coming in because the 4 different high schools and the 2 flips. I didn't know if he was going to be that good right off the bat. I thought maybe it was going to take some time.
Or you throw him in early, because you have to, because that's what you have to do to get him to go there, and he's not ready, or what. I mean, there's a million different ways that we could have Nebraska'd its way out of this. Mm-hmm. And I think the actual answer here, Andy, is he's a really special talent. Yeah, he's really good at football.
Oh yeah. So in the chat, DLS, Nebraska will lose the Rutgers probably. I mean, that's how this is going. Like that's how this season is going. Like, okay, we can move to a different game that was we talked about it and we said it this week. Like, watch out for this one. We said it, before we got back together. I think you and I both said it separately. Watch out for this one, but neither of us actually believed it was going to happen. Cal going into Jordan-Hare Stadium, and they didn't just beat Auburn. Like, they pounded Auburn, like physically pounded Auburn. They're grown man strips. Just give me that ball. And Peyton Thorne just got torn up in this game. And I first of all, props to Cal, which was going to be abandoned by the side of the conference road, goes to the ACC, and now is this the biggest non-conference win for the ACC so far?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I don't know what the bigger story here. The bigger story is, wow, look at Cal, or wow, Hugh Freeze not upgrading the quarterback position.
No.
Like that. Like what are we doing here?
Who was it on Twitter?
Godfrey from Split Zone Duo.
Stephen Godfrey, who said, for once, Hugh Freeze getting in trouble for not paying a player. And it really, I wondered about that too, because I remember going into the bowl game last year, they played Maryland in the Music City Bowl, and going into the game, he kind of gave Peyton Thorne the seal of approval, the vote of confidence. And then the game happens and you're like, oh God, you can't do it. No, this can't happen. You got to find another one. And they didn't. They didn't go in the portal and get anybody.
The thing that is really confusing to me about it, and I know it's easy to look after a 4-interception day and pick it apart, but Auburn is a very attractive transfer destination.
Yes.
It's a very...
There's good young talent.
There's good young talent. Really well. They've got a really good freshman receiver there in Cam Coleman. Like, there's a lot there. And, of course, it's an SEC school in Alabama that has won a national championship in the recent past and, like, has one of the louder stadiums in the country. Like,
right.
It's not a very hard place to sell. And you would think that the number one thing that Hugh Freeze would do would be aggressive in upgrading his roster, even if it was ruthless at times. So the fact that he didn't is just, frankly, kind of bizarre.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you kind of ask, is this the best you can do at quarterback?
It can't be.
But that's what I've been asking about Florida State. Like, is this the best you can do?
Yeah.
Can you try something else? Because look, all credit to Cal, which went in there and won that game. There was nothing fluky about what they did. They went in there and beat Auburn. But Auburn's going to struggle with everybody else on the schedule pretty much if they can't handle it.
Yeah, yeah. So how many quarterbacks in the column that you wrote about Michigan and how they were unable to, how many were in there?
I had 3. Riley Leonard was one. I'm not sure.
Yeah, that didn't age well.
Kyle McCord was one, though. And Syracuse beat Georgia Tech. Kyle McCord threw for 388 yards and 4 touchdowns.
And was screaming in the game after being, frankly, almost emotionless the entire Ohio State season last year. What did he say? Those guys suck, or those guys are soft.
These effers are sorry.
They're sorry. They're effing sorry. Yeah. And it's like, but like screaming it at the top of his lungs. Fran Brown is talking about him the way that Phil Jackson talked about Kobe back in the day. Like, I mean, it's like, it's an unbelievable thing to watch it. And listen, I don't want to overreact too much on the Syracuse thing, but Syracuse looks like a very different place with a quarterback that feels good and accepted in the place that he's in and is confident. So in the ACC, they could be a pretty tough out too. But like, Kyle McCord isn't some scrub that Ohio State just threw to the trash. Right. This is a 5-star quarterback with really impressive traits, and in the right scenario,
spent the entire offseason just getting crapped on.
Yeah, all after winning all but one game last year, and in the one game they lost, he got hit on the final play of the game when Marvin Harrison was wide open. That would have won. Like, I mean, it's not like he was terrible. The way that people talk about him was like he was terrible. And I know that Ohio State has a standard, and it didn't get met each of the last 3 years. So somebody's got to pay the price. I think Ryan Day has taken the brunt of a lot of that. And I think the quarterback's going to take but like, it'll be interesting to see in week 10, when you do a head-to-head comparison of Will Howard and Kyle McCord, which one you feel better about. And maybe it's a system thing. Ohio State's been very good.
I feel pretty good about Will Howard as long as Jeremiah Smith's on his team.
Yeah.
Feeling great about him, actually.
It is crazy. This is like the second episode on Saturday night we've done together, and I think that was the first time his name has been mentioned. If you've been watching college football and you don't know who Jeremiah Smith is, go watch his highlights from the first 2 weeks. That's a true freshman, and a true freshman in the Alabama game broke it open too.
Ryan Williams, who's
17 years old. So you do have some freshmen out there. But yeah, when I think about the Auburn scenario, Andy, it's like, would you rather have Peyton Thorne or Kyle McCord? Like, I think I would be frankly comfortable saying I would rather have Kyle McCord right now.
And look, I think Auburn could have come in if they'd wanted Kyle McCord with some NIL bucks. Like the reason Fran Brown got Kyle McCord is a relationship. Like, Fran Brown's wife used to work with Kyle McCord's dad. They've known each other for years. Like, it's sometimes it comes down to stuff like that.
You could also make the case too that Fran Brown in Syracuse is the perfect place for him.
Yes,
because when you do have a season like you did at Ohio State last year, I think the pressure to win and be perfect in every single game doesn't exist at Syracuse. You have a coach who loves you. Not that Ryan Day didn't, but you have a coach who loves you in a way that, and is talking about you in a way that you are like the savior of the beginning of the change of Syracuse. Like, I think that an emotional response to that for somebody might be a lot different than it would be under the pressure cooker that is, don't make one bad throw or you suck,
Right.
which is Ohio State.
Right.
So, you know, sometimes it's all about environment, and Ohio State a lot of times is the right environment for athletes, but sometimes it's not. And it'll be an interesting case study to see how he does. But if I had to blindly take Peyton Thorne or Kyle McCord right now to be leading Auburn's offense, I guess it's easy to say after a day like this where it was very contrasted, but probably Kyle McCord.
But you saw a year of Peyton Thorne last year.
And I saw a year of Kyle McCord last year, and it wasn't terrible. Yeah. I mean, it might not have been perfect, but it wasn't so awful.
We were talking about Kyle McCord. Speaking of Big Ten transfer quarterbacks who went to other conferences, so Sam Levitt at Arizona State right now.
Yeah.
Arizona State is leading Mississippi State 20-3 with 5 minutes to go.
It's like, are we ready for Arizona State to be maybe good?
Oh, wait.
Okay.
Are you folks ready? Get ready, guys. Thursday of this week, Arizona State is going to San Marcos, Texas. So in a matchup of two of the best party schools in America, Arizona State against Texas State. And if you didn't see Texas State, at least the score, Texas State bombed UTSA. So that's GJ Kinney. You've seen him on the show before. He's the head coach at Texas State. His high school coach was Jeff Traylor, who's the head coach at UTSA. They played a fun game last year. I think UTSA won by 7. So Frank Harris is gone from UTSA. Jordan McLeod, reigning Sun Belt Player of the Year from James Madison last year, now Texas State's quarterback. Texas State destroyed UTSA, and now Arizona State is coming to San Marcos on Thursday. We'll see if Arizona State can hang on and beat Mississippi State. If they can, holy crap, that's some Thursday night viewing right there.
Forgive me for my naivete.
Naivete?
Does Texas State get down like that party-wise?
God.
I don't know anything about
San
Texas.
Marcos? Oh.
Because I've had some wild nights in Tempe, Andy.
Well, I mean, you grew up 5 miles away.
Yeah.
So San Marcos, for those who don't know, just south of Austin. So you can drive into Austin and party if you want to party there. But San Marcos brings its own party. There's a lot of tubing down the river. There's crazy water parks. Like it is made for like the ultimate college kid commuter school party.
I could be a tuber.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you'd be a great tuber.
Yeah.
Like it's the kind of place where you have a tube for your keg.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, there was a salt river in Arizona that I went tubing down, but it's been a long time since I've gone tubing.
Well, this is, again, matchup of two of the best party schools in America. I can't wait till that game. Kenny Dillingham. We probably should wait, because for all we know, somebody's going to wake up, listen to this, and they're like, y'all know that Mississippi State came back and won that game 42-22, right?
Hey, listen, Andy, as we reminded them, I'll remind you, it's every day, baby.
That's right.
Shows
every day.
We can table some of the things that are uncertain until they're certain, because,
Kyle in the chat confirming, as an alum, Texas State definitely gets down.
All right, Kyle. All right. Well, maybe I go down there. I mean, I'm too old now. Maybe I'm washed, but
you're washed.
Yeah, that's good to know. But you know what? It is interesting. I think this might be a good segue, not to take your segues away because you're a master at that, but not wanting to talk about Kenny Dillingham too soon because you don't want to mess up your take. I had a take about Iowa State and Iowa this week.
You pissed some people off.
And people got really mad at me. I'm an idiot. I don't know anything when I picked Iowa State to win. But I can't do a victory lap because in the middle of the game, I was like, holy crap, I feel like an idiot for picking against Iowa, who has a semi-functional offense and a really good defense.
Right, because halfway through the game, it was a typical Iowa State game, except Iowa's offense was a little better than it has been. What we did not see coming was Iowa's defense suddenly giving up points in the second half and Rocco Becht turning into Dan Marino.
Yeah, the final score was 20-19, so I'm not going to say that the sky is falling, but it is a very unfamiliar feeling for Iowa to play a low-scoring game that was very physical, to be winning 19-17 with a few minutes left and then give up a score. Like, that's just not the Iowa that we know. But at the same time, this is a rivalry game.
Mm-hmm. Matt Campbell's first win, right?
Yeah, you're at home, right? And your defense gives up 20 points and you lose. I don't know whose fault that is, but
Right.
like that 20 points is supposed to be
enough to
winning performance. So, and it is funny because that last second field goal that Iowa State buried to win also put the total over. So the over of the game hit, and maybe that's Iowa's offense's fault. I don't know. There was a 75-yard touchdown pass in this game from Rocco Becht. There was some explosive offensive plays in this game, but you don't expect Iowa's defense to be the one on the field last that gives the game up.
Well, and we still because one thing this doesn't do is affect Iowa's Big Ten record.
Mm-hmm.
Iowa got the best draw out of the Big Ten. I still think they're gonna be tough to score on for most teams because like Iowa State, they only scored 20.
Yeah,
like you said,
and
a
Iowa
little
State's
more
got some
confident
good
offense
skill there too.
and you can win.
Yeah. I think I had Iowa in the first 4 out or the next 4 out on the bubble watch that we did for On 3 last week. I'll be doing one of those again once the dust settles from Saturday. But there in the third quarter when Iowa was in command of that game, I was like, holy crap, this team, if they have the defense from last year and can actually get first downs and give that defense a rest, they might be a problem, especially with the draw that they got schedule-wise in the Big Ten.
Speaking of the Big Ten, there was a team last week that we were like, oh, they solved everything. They fixed it. They went on the road, played a pretty good program, looked very impressive offensively, looked like they were not the boring offense that they were all last year. We had the OC talking about making a Dairy Queen blizzard. Penn State almost lost to Bowling Green.
Yeah, what the hell was that?
I don't know.
We were in the middle of covering the Texas-Michigan game, but we both had it up on our iPads, and I was like, it was 7-0 Bowling Green, and then I think Andy was like, okay, whatever, who cares? It's a slow start. And then I was like, it's like 14-10, and and as the quarter kept going on and the game went on, I was like, Bowling Green could literally win this game right now in the fourth quarter.
So many Connor Bazelak making life miserable for Tom Allen jokes here, because for those who don't know, Connor Bazelak is Bowling Green's quarterback. He started at Missouri, then he went to Indiana, where Tom Allen was the head coach. That marriage did not go well. Tom Allen ultimately gets fired in Indiana. Bazelak's already at Bowling Green by that point, but Tom Allen gets fired in Indiana after last season. He's now the DC at Penn State. And Connor Bazelak was carving Penn State up. And it's funny because Penn State's offense saved them. The defense was supposed to be the thing that carried
27 points.
Yeah.
They gave up 27 points to Bowling Green, and I think it was a one-possession game in the fourth quarter until that long touchdown run there with like 5 minutes left in the game. So, I don't know. Again, Penn State, a team that was in my top 10 last week. What do you do with that? Like, help me, please, because I'm going to get torn apart tomorrow.
Can we workshop it? Bearing in mind that Oregon is playing right now, they're losing by 6 in the third quarter. So bearing that in mind, let us workshop the top 10. I got to do bracketology.
Okay.
So I have to see
people
the teams.
helping people,
Yeah. All right. So some combination of Georgia and Ohio State at number 1 and 2, or should Texas move into?
Well, I don't know if we want to give away the whole thing.
Okay.
I made a move.
Well, we'll say those 3 are the top.
Those 3 are the top 3 because they're off. That's obvious. That doesn't give anything away. But then, I'm going to probably put Bama 4 because they opened the game up.
Okay.
And if you roll, and that's the thing, you can sigh. I sighed when I'm doing it.
I'm not sighing. You got to put somebody there.
That's the problem. It's like if it's not Bama, then who? It's like you could move up Miami.
Tennessee?
Tennessee was I think 8 last week, or 9 last week. No, they were 10 last week.
Tennessee at 4 or 5 feels good to me. Yeah.
Because of the win that they got. So, I think once you get out of the top 5, and then you could put Miami 6 and probably feel pretty comfortable with it. We don't know where to put Oregon yet because their game is still going on.
We don't really know what Miami is. We kind of need to know what Florida is, and maybe when they play Texas A&M.
But I think I feel comfortable.
Miami has USF in a couple weeks. So at least we'll have a little bit of data, common data points between Miami and Alabama there.
But once you get out of the top 5, I think I'll be able to round it out. But it's just like, what do you do if Oregon wins and beats Boise by a possession? Like, how do you rank which performance was worse or which performance was less hurtful? Like, they both stunk.
Remember,
so
they struggled against Idaho.
They did. Yeah, you got to keep it all into account. Yeah.
So, all right. Penn State, I don't know.
But we're in a 12-team era, and we don't even know what to do with 5, 6, and 7 in week 2.
Would you leave Penn State in the top 12?
Probably, but
and like Missouri, we think is good, but they haven't really been challenged yet. Now they play Boston College next week, so hopefully we'll get a little better idea then.
You voted in the AP poll, right?
Yes, I have.
So in the past, when you voted in the AP poll, because I did it for a few years too, did you used to drop teams 5-6 spots if they didn't lose? Sometimes did that ever like present
if they
itself?
were just awful, like god awful, and it was very early in the season. But the larger the body of work, the less likely you are to drop somebody who wins.
But we're early enough in the season that you can drop.
Yeah,
somebody.
I had dramatic moves early in the season just because you don't know what you're seeing yet.
But you couldn't have. The problem with the Penn State situation is that you couldn't have felt better about them last week.
Right.
Like it wasn't like, oh, they won and they beat some FCS team 55-0, and you don't know. They beat what we thought was going to be a very good West Virginia team handily. So you have a sum of information there that's conflicting, and you don't know how to average that out.
Husker D says the Ole Miss disrespect is crazy.
The Ole Miss, that's an oversight. Ole Miss is definitely going to be.
They're in there now. Now they
10.
haven't really played a challenging opponent yet either.
But they haven't looked like ass. So
they've looked great. They've looked phenomenal the whole time. So that's the thing. Like, look good against the teams you're supposed to look good against. That's about all we can ask for at this point.
Yeah. And Ole Miss maybe should be in 6 or 7 because they have a really good roster and they have looked solid or to very good and haven't sweated for 2 weeks, which is not something you can say about a lot of teams right now.
Yeah, I really don't know. I think it's going to be very hard for you to do that top 10. It's probably a little easier for me to do the bracketologies just because I have to basically pick an ACC champ and a Big 12 champ, and I think everybody's probably picking the same ACC champ right now until we get a little more body of work from everybody.
Well, let me ask you this, Andy, because we're fun. We're just it's just us girls hanging out.
Yep.
How would you rank 1 through 3? I'm not going to tell you how I'm doing it, and I'm not changing it. I've already written it, but I just would want to know where you.
I have had Ohio State number 1 and Georgia number 2 all off season, and then I've had Bama at 3. You know what? I think results should matter. So I would put Texas at number 1 right now because they have the best win of that bunch.
Well, actually,
no,
pretty good,
win.
man.
Shoot, you're right. Yeah,
that was a pretty good win.
Maybe Georgia should be number 1.
Team that just dropped 70. Yeah,
that's right. Because Clemson destroyed Appalachian State, which makes that Georgia win look even better. Oh man. Maybe I go Georgia, Texas, Ohio State, but I don't. I mean, like Ohio State hasn't done anything to drop. It's just they don't have the great win.
The scenario is Ohio State manhandled a MAC team and I think they didn't even give up 100 yards of offense.
Yes.
Their defense clamped them down. Everybody they covered the spread by themselves.
Correct.
They hit the over by themselves. As we're talking, Oregon just looks like took a
scored
60 yards to the house.
Yeah, so they're going to take the lead here.
They haven't updated the bug yet, though, so I don't know what's going on there. But it's basically what matters more right now: looking really good and having a good roster, or actually having good wins. I know what I've done. We'll see if you agree with it in the morning. But it is an interesting workshop because it kind of is contextualizing the first few weeks of the season and how all over the place it's been.
Well, so I've got to do the seeding for the bracketology, and I've got to pick a Big 12 champ. And I've had Kansas State. Kansas State needed some help, maybe from the Zebras, to beat Tulane. John Summerall left that game real mad. I don't think Kansas State looked particularly great in that game.
Well, that scoop and score in the fourth quarter, I mean, was a gift too.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know that I feel confident in them right now. I think I'm more confident in Utah. Yeah, so I might have to swap those two.
But also have to figure out what's up with Cam Rising because he left the game and was out of the game.
Exactly.
So like that, it's just there's nothing easy. Nothing easy Saturday. Yeah.
No, there's nothing easy at all. And that K-State Tulane game was a fun one to watch. But K-State should probably never go to New Orleans again.
Yeah.
After losing to Alabama in the Sugar Bowl and just getting pushed to the absolute limit by Tulane. And that good job, John Summerall, because he just took over that program from Willie Fritz, and he had K-State on the ropes.
Yeah, it was an elite uniform game.
Oh, it was a beautiful uniform game. Oklahoma State and Arkansas. Like, that's one of those you come away. I know the Arkansas fans are just gutted about the way they lost.
Taylor Green looked awesome.
He did. Jaquindon Jackson looks awesome. But this is the thing about Oklahoma State. They are old. They've been through it. So when they got down 21-7, like it wasn't over. And they were going to keep coming. And in fact, they looked like they were going to win the game in regulation. And then Arkansas kicked a field goal to force overtime. So you thought, okay, maybe the momentum's back on Arkansas' side. But that was a hell of a game, and that leaves me with more confidence for what Arkansas can do moving forward in SEC play, even
Sure.
though they lost.
When you have a quarterback that can make plays the way that Green can, you're in games.
Yeah.
And I was texting friends who like Arkansas in the middle of the game, like, are we ready for good Arkansas? Like, that's how I felt watching it.
Because we think Oklahoma State's good.
Oklahoma State is good. Arkansas, I thought Arkansas was beating them up really good there.
Yeah.
It looked like we were headed to blowout city the other way.
Yeah.
And to not come up with the win is definitely tough, especially for a Sam Pittman situation where he's, living week by week right now.
Yeah. Yeah. And the thing is, like, we've had him fired, and I don't know that that's a foregone conclusion. I think he's got a chance to coach his way off of it. Another guy in the SEC who we basically fired him last week, but I did write a column saying his one chance is if he plays the freshman quarterback and the freshman quarterback looks good. So Billy Napier starts DJ Lagway. He had to because Graham Mertz was out with a concussion, and Florida beats Samford, which you knew Florida was going to beat Samford. But DJ Lagway was doing things that we have not seen a Florida quarterback do, throwing the ball in a long time. And I get it, it's an FCS opponent, but there are throws he can make that most Florida quarterbacks in the past bunch of years have not been able to make. And now Billy Napier says after the game, I think Graham Mertz might be back for Texas A&M. What do you do? You start the damn freshman.
Well, yeah, I thought that DJ Lagway played a game. People were asking me, how do you think because I am a 5-star quarterback freshman.
You love 5 stars, yes.
How do you think DJ Lagway played? And my answer to that question is good enough to play again.
Yes.
That's the way I view it. And also, too, Billy Napier has to recognize that a week after losing miserably to Miami on your home field, that somehow Florida fans are enthusiastic and excited about something.
You've given them hope. They were done. They were done this time last week. And now they're like, got DJ. And I don't know. The thing is, the competition level is going to increase dramatically when they get to Texas A&M next week. So what DJ looked like against Samford may not look like that against Texas A&M.
But I think you can extrapolate off of a performance like that and say he might not throw for almost 500 yards and set a Florida passing record, but he's not a deer in the headlights out there. He should be able to be functional.
Like watching him hit receivers in stride, watching him hit people deep down the field, watching him flick his wrist and the ball goes 40 yards.
That one circus touchdown throw that he threw where he kind of left his feet like he did in high school. It was awesome.
Yeah, he's different. And the thing is, Anthony Richardson was a different special talent. Went number 4 in the draft, and Billy Napier went 6-6 with him as the starter. So having a super special quarterback does not necessarily guarantee.
But I think going 6-6 or hell 5-7 with an exciting quarterback that gives you hope and flashes of the future is a hell of a lot better than going 5-7 and just getting your butt kicked with Graham Mertz as your quarterback.
I agree with that. I don't know that it saves Billy Napier because it's funny. I hadn't thought about it this way before, but if you're just average with DJ Lagway as your quarterback and you were just average with Anthony Richardson as your quarterback, maybe it's not the quarterback.
So let's workshop this.
Okay.
What's better for Florida? Locking DJ Lagway back up on the bench and being mediocre with Graham Mertz, but still having that wild card where people are excited about something, or play your ace, play your wild card. It's still not go well, and then you've got nothing left. Like that.
He can leave either way. You can start him or you can sit him, and he can still leave if Billy Napier gets fired and he decides he doesn't want to be there, or if Billy Napier gets kept.
I'm talking about like job preservation mode. What's the job preservation move? You wrote the column saying that you play the kid freshman.
Everybody's excited about who has the highest ceiling, because if he gets toward that ceiling, maybe you have a better chance of winning games.
I agree.
I think it's the only logical conclusion.
It's illogical to not play him.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the only logical conclusion. So, I mean, it's crazy that's what we're talking about this recently into the season. It's only week 2.
Well, it just makes you think. And I know this isn't popular because Graham Mertz wasn't bad last year. I think he gets a bad rap.
Right. The defense was bad. He was okay.
But it makes you think. You put DJ out there, and he's an exciting game-changing talent, do they keep it closer with Miami, thus changing how we feel about Florida's prospects this year?
Correct.
It's easy to go back in time and second guess.
Yeah.
Well, this looked really good. It looked really, really bad last week. Why didn't we do this?
So let's talk about another SEC quarterback who came in with great fanfare to his school, who was viewed like DJ Lagway as the hope for his program, the one who will lead them back to the promised land. Nico Iamaleava.
Yeah. You thought we were going to forget, didn't you? Because we get some, I do anyway, like some you hate Tennessee stuff. And it's like, no, Tennessee is awesome.
The thing is, they made this look so easy.
It wasn't interesting.
But this was the most impressive win of the day other than Texas over Michigan.
Agree.
This was a blowout. They made Grayson McCall and NC State look bad.
Mm-hmm.
The defense for Tennessee was excellent. They had a pick 6 in this game.
Yeah, defensive touchdown.
And then Nico was great, and Dylan Sampson was great, and the line blocked well.
You know, we haven't gotten to Oklahoma yet, but like I think I'm going to the Oklahoma Tennessee game in Norman because it's 2 hours from where I live. And in my head, it's, you know, producer River here was the one who floated the idea to go up there. But you're going to have 2 potential 5-star freshmen facing off against each other in an undefeated matchup in Norman.
Yeah.
In a first-year SEC matchup that we didn't usually get. Like, that's a really inherently interesting game.
Yeah.
Oklahoma is a whole other bag after what we watched against Houston on Saturday. But, like, Nico, we've been high on Nico since the second we laid eyes on him.
Yeah.
And every single week you're expecting, like, if he was going to take a step back or if he was just going to be
and he did make some mistakes. He threw a couple picks,
and that's going to happen.
But he was efficient. I mean, 9.2 yards per attempt, 211 yards passing, 2 TDs. So efficient day for him. And they ran
how many picks did he throw?
2. And Tennessee averaged 5.7 yards a carry on the ground. Like that's the part that's going to make them so dangerous. Is Nico not necessarily Nico putting up these massive numbers. It's Nico putting up efficient numbers and them mauling you on the ground.
And you know what you said at B-Dubs today that you should say on the podcast, because I thought it was good and I made a note of it. You said he always seems to make at least something happen.
Yes.
And
when it looks like something's going to go negative, he can scramble out and get you a yard. Or it looks like, you know, he's about to get sacked. He can dump it, you know, check it down and get you a couple of yards where it would have been a -8. So I think
turning negative plays into gains of 2 are massive.
And that's what Hendon Hooker did over and over for Tennessee.
Should we start going down that road? Like, are we approaching Tennessee hype excitement from 2 years ago with this team?
Yes. And the thing is, they need to go to Norman and win to really get that to a fever pitch.
Yeah.
And so we can talk about Oklahoma now because
let me just say before you go, sorry,
yeah.
I just wanted to make this point. If I would have read you Nico's stat line before the game, what do you think the score would have been?
I would have asked you how much they ran for.
Yeah, well, you always need more information.
Yeah.
51-10 with the 2 picks.
Would not have said 51.
That. They made that look easy.
Yeah, I would have said, oh, did they win 31-24 or something like that?
Yeah, no, this wasn't even a sweat. Yeah.
No, they made it look very easy. Now they're going to play Kent State, and then they're going to go play Oklahoma. Now, Oklahoma, the defense, as we expected, very good. The offense looked very bad against Houston. And remember, this is a Houston team that lost 27-7 to UNLV last week at home.
Yeah. Jackson Arnold had a rough day.
He did.
There's no way to put it. There's no other way to put it. You know, we're going to talk about when the 5-star young quarterback is awesome, and we're going to tell it like it is when he's not. He just did not have a great day today.
Yeah.
And the entire team reflected that.
Well, the defense came up huge because this was a 14-12 game. Houston gets the ball with 2 minutes to go, and you're like, uh-oh. This is we could see them walking this off with a field goal, huge celebration. Instead, Oklahoma hits the back in the end zone for the safety, 16-12, Oklahoma ball, game over. Like that defense came up huge when it had to, but it shouldn't have to do that against that opponent.
Well, you started having visions in your head of walk-off field goal because we just got done watching Notre Dame.
Yeah, it's exactly. I thought it was the same situation.
So, yeah, I mean, the thing is, you know, Oklahoma, a top 15 team, won its clunker. That's the good news. They should win next week. I don't recall off the top of my head who they play, but I know it's a manageable I don't think it's anybody scary.
Right.
And then you have Tennessee coming into town in 2 weeks, which is an opportunity for you to play a good football team and a good football game, and to kind of let us know where you were, because I do think that coming into the year, that with the way that Brent Venables has recruited and the guys that he's brought in, that it was possible that Oklahoma was further along than people thought they were going into the SEC.
We were worried about the offensive line.
Yeah.
That's what we were worried about. And look, offensive struggles.
They play Tulane.
They did. Well, John Summerall, good defense there. So better offensive line play tends to lead to better everything. But they've got to get that straightened out, or they're going to struggle with Tennessee. They go to Auburn. I mean, after we saw Cal beat Auburn, obviously Oklahoma can go in there and beat them. But what happens if Auburn decides that's one of the days they want to play? Like, that seems to be like when they played Georgia and Alabama last year. Like, oh, we'll play today.
Yeah,
New Mexico State, not so much. We're not playing today. So that Oklahoma has to get this straight, and they'll be playing a team that defensively will challenge them probably more than Houston. I would argue. So it's interesting. Willie Fritz left Tulane for Houston, but I think John Summerall's defense might be better than the one in Houston.
Yeah, no, it's I just feel disrespectful for saying that next week's going to be a pushover. I was wrong about that.
Yeah. Well, we were thinking, okay, they're not starting their SEC schedule yet because the
I thought they had one more cakewalk, and they don't.
But it is not. So next week is going to be fun. We are going to Alabama, Wisconsin, and I remember thinking as we were watching Texas blow out Michigan, I was like, uh-oh, did we pick 2 blowouts? Are we doing 2 blowouts in a row? Would be 3 blowouts in a row because we were at Miami, Florida as well. And then I watched Alabama USF, and I'm like, maybe not.
Yeah, I don't know. It's the question of the week is, what do you take more seriously, the clunker or the impressive win? When you have both, like Alabama, first week didn't even sweat. Second week, they're in a 1-point game in the fourth quarter with USF, and they were at home, right? So, which one matters most? Which one outweighs the other? I guess the only way to really answer that question is more context.
That's exactly right. Oh, by the way, one more note of congratulations.
Okay.
The Fighting Illini.
Oh, yeah.
Brett Bielema was Fighting Illini. Beat Kansas in a very fun game. And Illinois, that's one of those, the line was moving, and you're like, why is the line moving toward Illinois? Why? What do people know that we don't? Somebody knew something.
Yeah, well, last year the line was strange, too. I told you the story earlier in the week. I was at Tuscaloosa for the Texas-Alabama game. They played on Friday night, the night before. Kansas's offense was awesome, and I think they were on the road or what. I don't remember. No, they were. They were at home, and they were a 3-point favorite or something. And I was like, what the hell's going on here? I was like, well, usually when that happens, I like to play the other side. That doesn't make sense. And then Kansas just mauled them.
Yes, it was ugly.
It was like the second quarter was like, I'm ready to watch, Selling Sunset or something on Netflix. And, I did the exact opposite. And the line was weird today, and it was a weird game. So I think that, Brett Bielema obviously is a good coach that has a long-standing record of success in winning these types of games in the Big Ten. But you just didn't think or wouldn't have thought that Illinois' defense was up to snuff enough to keep up with what Kansas brings to the table.
Like, they've played good defense since Bielema got there, but you look at some of the players they've had. Johnny Newton last year, Witherspoon the year before. Like, they had elite talent. They had first-round NFL type talent. I'm not sure they have that right now. But they held this team to 16 points. And for Kansas, you saw a lot of, maybe they miss Andy Kotelnicki, who's the OC at Penn State.
And they had some bad turnovers in the game,
they did.
Too, so
now we will get a treat featuring Kansas on Friday of this week, because in that MLS stadium in Kansas City, UNLV will play the Jayhawks, and UNLV played Utah Tech. They just clobbered them. But that UNLV win against Houston, when we look at it next to the Houston-Oklahoma game on Saturday, okay, what do we expect from UNLV? What's that going to look like with Holy Cross transfer quarterback Matthew Sluka in the go-go offense?
Well, I say, Andy, we picked a hell of a week to spend together. There's a lot of football to be played, and we get the openers of the NFL on Sunday, and then we have a bunch of college football next week, and then another awesome weekend of this next week.
That's exactly right, because we're going to be bouncing around, hitting a couple of campuses. We're going to hit the On3 offices. Then we're going to wind up in Madison for Alabama and Wisconsin. It is going to be so much fun. There will be many Wendy saucy nugs consumed, I'm sure. And this is going to be just an amazing season. I saw early in the chat, and I posted the comments for a second. Somebody said, is this going to be 2007 all over again? God, I hope so. And the vibes I'm getting off today, yeah, maybe.
Well, and the good news about if it is 2007 again is that there's enough room for everybody. So, we'll see at the end of the year how this whole thing shakes out. But doing an unprecedented season during a year where there are so many question marks is the perfect way to welcome in a new system. So
nobody's good. Everybody stinks except Georgia, Ohio State, and Texas.
And guess what? They could,
and maybe they do
weekend.
too.
Yeah, they might stink too. The thing I don't know, new job, 1 weekend, 7 days in with you, Andy, is what happens if Oregon loses tonight? Like, are we hitting it again? Like, I have no idea what
you mean. Am I calling your room or like walking to your hotel room, banging on your door and like, we got to do another show?
Yeah, well,
maybe.
The thing about it is that you woke up at 2 a.m. Eastern time today.
Yes.
So
for those who don't know, we're at the hour mark of the show. We can do a little grab ass here.
Yes.
So for those who don't know, I'm a high school football dad now. My son's a freshman, first year playing high school football. So he had a game Friday night. I didn't want to miss it. So what I did is I scheduled a 6 a.m. flight from Orlando to Detroit, which if it was on time would get me to the Michigan-Texas game. And so, the high school game ends at 10 o'clock. I get home. I sleep till 2 a.m. I drive 2 hours to Orlando, hop on a plane. I tried to sleep on the plane. And then just this incredible day of college football. So I'm running on fumes right now, but I can tell you right now, Ari.
You're not going to bed.
I'm not going to bed because Boise State, Oregon's still on. And you know what? If Boise State beats Oregon, I'm waking your ass up and we're doing another.
Buddy, I'm going to write this top 10. I'll be up. I'm watching this. So the one thing I will say is I know you had a long day. I was up till like 2 a.m. watching that Northwestern Duke game on Friday night.
A thriller.
And let me tell you something. And I saw somebody tweet this. I'm stealing it, but I feel that if you were not up until 2 a.m. on Friday night sweating Northwestern and Duke on a makeshift field on Lake Michigan, step your game up.
You ain't living.
College football is not for the faint of heart, and we will be up and producing content and doing everything that we can to make sure that you guys are served with college football news and entertainment. There's a lot happening in the sport right now. There's a game still happening. We're going to be together, me and Andy, in person for another week. It's been an awesome first week, and I bet the next week's going to be even better. And
touchdown, Oregon. The Ducks want me to go to bed.
I'm so tired.
We may talk to you Monday. We may talk to you in about an hour. Who knows? But we'll talk to you again soon.